Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. Let's crack like on everyone's Thursday. How was work? How was school? How's Kim going home? That's what you did. Welcome in, Jazz. Welcome in, everyone else in chat. You guys are doing alright. I'm gonna catch up on this Discord stuff I've got to catch up and do. Sorry the stream's running a little late today. I was eating Theo's birthday cake with him. So it's a fair enough reason to be a little bit late to stream. I feel like it was as if. So yeah. But tonight we're gonna get into some house robberies, I think. At least I hope. We're going to do a little bit of like, I guess the dotting the T's, crossing the T's and dotting the I's. A bit of a sus, what we need to do with the biker gang. But other than that, we should be gangster. We should be gangster. But I've posted my link places, I'm spamming it everywhere. So, we're good to go. Hey, Zeke, hey, Chippy, you're an L streamer. Ayo, Westy, what's crack-a-lack? I'm going to run off you guys to chat. Do another 100k, what's crack-a-lack, everyone's Thursday. You're actually late, L mod. L streamer, L mod, where's your streams, bro? You're not even a streamer at this point, Chippy. What's going on? Oh. Why did I hit the no? Oh, Westy got too quick on the exclamation mark join. I was like, why did I say the raffle's running? Try it again. Dead streamer. That's a wild call. I don't know if I'd say that. That's just mean. That's just mean. Jazz is trying to take it again. No, but welcome on to the stream, guys. You guys all doing well? Yeah, welcome on in. What are you guys up to today? What's everyone's dinner? Fucking, you know, how was work? How was school, Chippy? I know you're going back to the 5th grade, so that's been probably difficult for you. You would have done really well in that row show. Are you smiling in the 5th grade? Was one of the kids, though, I reckon. Everyone would have beat you. They would have won. But let's get over to the main screen. Let's go. You finished your first Blender model. You actually started making the whole of Minecraft in Blender instead of making a YouTube video, which is pretty wild to me, man. I'm actually pretty surprised about that. But at least it's going well for you. I don't know, I'm in this mood. I'm talking a bit of shit, chat. Let's just stop. Let's just stop. Steak and baked veggies. I just had chicken biryani, so I'm pretty pleased. And a little bit of birthday cake to finish it off. You can't complain with that, right? You definitely can't complain with that. But no, good on you, Ziki. Seriously though, because I've fucked around with Blender. It'd be actually pretty difficult. I'm giving you grief, but yeah, it's I imagine it isn't easy. Got garage stuck in my eyes. What's going on here? What's going on here? Look on DMs whenever? I'll look at DMs now because I was being mean. I feel like I should. No, nice. I thought it was just going to be an emote and just like that at me. I'd be fair too. It actually looks really nice because I've seen you doing like the model outside of it. And like looking at like the vertices and stuff. So that looks sick, dude. Good work. And look, well, what is it? Open media link. You can actually look at it on stream, chat. How's that? Look at what he's looking at, what he's making. Is that alright, Zeki? Can I reveal this on stream, or is that so you want to keep hidden? Yeah, you could have put the effort in and learnt it then, though. It's just like at school, you don't want to focus on the things that you like. I don't know, you just don't care about it. But here you go, chat. La boom, Mr. Raw called himself a torch chick. Nice. Little beach. This is actually really good though. Higher quality graphics than my 5M is that. Alright, anyway. Oh, it's for his YouTube video he's making. Now how to animate it. Yeah, that's probably the difficult part, right? Well, at least we're gonna drive our Nightblade finally. We get onto the radio though. We go to the talk screen again. Winning all day. Mr. Raw got 100k chips. Yeah, well Jazz just won the last one, so I'd rather you won it than Jazz. Right. Boom. You made Theo cry. Did he actually? Can't be doing that. Because Theo's the one that catches the Pokemon as well. Oh no. Thing is, he goes to bed soon. Yeah, radio check. He's looking after it. You can trade it. Yeah,
g'day mate, how you going?
Yeah, good mate. Fucking, what? Who's this?
Fucking Doris, mate.
Oh, Dose. Fuck, sorry, mate.
Come on, mate.
Fuck, yeah, I'll get it together. Fuck, I've been smoking too much of the good stuff that you've been giving me.
Oh, you need more, mate.
To be honest with you, they never say no, but I've got plenty of level 2 gun variety. I've got like fucking nearly 1,000 bags. I'm just stopped fucking selling it and starting just harvesting it now. I can't be fucked.
Yeah, no, that's fair, mate, that's fair.
You don't actually have to trade it. There'll be more, it's okay. I can actually make another one pop up now. I can make another one pop up now. Like, I feel bad, bro. Roleplay doesn't
I
care.
think we need to get some more people selling, though, because our drug score is just a bit low.
Alright.
Mine's sitting at 10,000.
Well, I mean, I am set up to do a bit of selling. I could go do that now, to be honest, even just sort of fuck around. I was thinking of doing house robberies, but yeah, maybe I'll just sell some of my bags.
I wouldn't mind trying out some oil rig, though. I've never done oil rig.
Yeah, same actually. I've never touched oil rig, eh? I'll go straight. Look, bam.
Shit.
It's like it never happened. It's like it never happened. No, I know you do, bro. I know you do. I'm just being a freak.
Have you seen the guys floating around?
But I want him a champ. She's got a master ball. Yeah, sorry, what was that dose, mate? Was slightly distracted there, my bad.
Nah, you're right, mate. I was just asking. Have you seen the guys floating around at all?
Oh, I seen him a bit earlier today. I know Prez was around doing stuff with oil and that. I've been interacting with bloody Mark, and he's got a new friend named Nigel.
Nigel?
Yeah, Nigel Bushty, something like that. He's a bit of a fucking character, but fucking he's a bit more put together than Mark is. I'm regretting bringing Mark in as a prospect and not this Nigel fella.
Yeah. Oh, Nigel, no, friend.
Oh, encounter. You have to buy him, I think. You have to buy him. Does it not work? Is it work because there's one up? Raw. Gen encounter 1? Or is this going to work? Because this should work. Racist.
And how's Jimmy? Is he still got a gambling addiction?
Yeah, him and Wee Wee both got kneecapped and hatcheted last night. We lost Jimmy, couldn't find him, but then Wee Wee got sent with that Nigel fella and bloody Mark to do some house robberies. And they didn't do any house robberies, so I don't know what's happening with Wee Wee, but I think he's going to get blood let out. I'm not too sure.
Fucking hell.
No, you don't see nothing.
I've not got an addiction. I am up
There he is.
70 grand.
I'm actually just driving around. I'm getting distracted by chatting to these guys.
or-
I have to go to the shop, go to the cruise storage.
My money.
I don't think it's working. Let me check. Because I can see the actual activity.
About to do
Sure.
some fucking map crate job thing. Package.
Action Street.
Hey, Jimmy.
Command. Yeah, so it's not even
Surely
coming
by now
through.
you
It's not even coming
fucking
through,
worked out
lad.
the,
So what's going on here?
casino, mate.
Actions.
I'm reading the cards.
Yeah.
After
Command.
last night, I'm up. Big time.
Gee. That's good, mate. That's good.
But trainer
I've
works.
been working on the materials and shit, so, you know, healthy fucking balance of life.
Oh, it's
right
catch, bro. No, you don't need cops in, but you still get fucking alerts for it. I don't think you need. We can check it right now, bro, because like it's on the app. I think you can see it on my phone now. It's not like hidden anymore. So house robberies, I'll have to like zoom in, but it's 0 available, 0 needed. And then ATMs 0 available, 1 needed. Smash and grabs is 0 available, 1 needed. So you need some for the smash and grab. You need 1 for both of those, ATM and the smash and grab. 24/7 you need a hacking device to actually see, but I'm pretty sure it's 2 cops. Yep. And there's 4 cops for Fleeker. So it's actually pretty reasonable. So like with houses you can do them without cops or with cops, and that way it's still something to do. But I think Mr. O2, it's catch Gen Pokemon 1. And that should work. Yeah, there you go. So it's doing something. Maybe it's just the other commands aren't being listened to correctly. And that's my bad. But that should work. And it should work for also catch my Pokemon. Oh, come on now. Come on. I've done well in this. It's great. There you go. And then there's a Spearow. Raw's getting it. He's into it. You can actually get your Pokemon rated by using exclamation mark Bill's PC. What are your thoughts on that though, Westy? As a cop main and someone that does cop a lot too, what do you think about having the cop numbers on 0 for house robberies and for like mailbox robberies and that kind of thing? Do you think that's smart? That's the play, or is that you asking so you can be like, do I need to be on to give you guys something to do, or you know?
Hello there.
Oh, Simsy, thank you for the follow, G-Star. What's crack-a-lackin' with your Thursday? What's kicking back? Reckon, what'd you get up to today? Hope you had a good one, getting up to whatever you did, my G-Star. Pretty sure it's Big Chich. Yeah, I thought so. Big Chich, here we go. Yeah, right. Celebratory, it's Chich, low. Do you know that Simsy actually streams? Simsy streams. Old Chich streams on one of his other accounts. He hasn't done it in a little while. He's not like hot on it, but let's... Is it this one that you stream on? It is this one you stream on. Lad, that's large. I'm gonna give you a little shout out, Cheech. You might even get a few follows from this, mate. Or is it like this? Well, there's one there for that one, mate. I think for the time being is good for entry level, but I think you should need cops for medium and high tier houses. Yeah, of course. Well, it's and I think it's the same with boost, right? I actually agree with that too. But at the time being, it makes sense, and it also means that there's should hopefully almost always be something going on for you guys. But whether or not that's actually the way it'll end up like being, who knows? Because that just depends on like if people are around at the right time when you guys are around too. Now we have a tow rep somewhere, so I'm looking in here. I'm getting distracted again. Hella bad for it. Over here. Thanks, brother. You're welcome. They do, yeah. So, like, yeah, it's kind of like I don't want to show people how to check for cops because, like, because that's what we just did then, basically, right? We just checked for cops. Put these in here. We thought we had more of these, unless you put somewhere else. But yeah, but when it comes to drug sales, most of the time you guys aren't even going to come and press people, right? Like, yeah, fuck the cops. But you guys aren't going to come press people when you do drug selling. You're just going to take photos from afar, trying to gather evidence, that kind of thing. And there's no need to be stressed. Nah, Bernard will fall over before you arrest anyone, I reckon. Will I get tornadoed? Please, no. Oh, yep. I'd rather that. No, exactly. And I've never really been a W cop, but that's also because I've probably almost always been like a crim main. You know, I only really cop mained at the end of New Spark, and then was meant to when we started. Oh, when they started up this city in 1.0, but you know, your boy didn't travel up a lot. He didn't do too good there. Yeah. Oh fuck! If I see you straight up, I'm gonna be tasing on sight, bro. I got little revolver butts. You don't have to worry too much about getting shot by Bernard because I can't. Like, I'm alright. I can shoot. Okay, you guys have seen me shoot on stream. Obviously, I can shoot a fucking 9mm, but I don't know about these revolver business, chat. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that's the go. Who's selling in our area? But I'm gonna get pressed by press. Oop.
Who's selling in our fucking spot?
Just thinking the same thing there, mate. I'm already on my way down there. I'm not in colours too, so I can press them.
I'll be down after my wheel spin, mate.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. Because they understand what's fun and what's not fun. Yeah, we got some fella selling over there if he's F40 or something.
Yeah, copy, I'm on my way.
Oh, what's going on here, mate?
Just doing a bit of interacting with the locals, mate. What was that?
Yeah, mate, bit of exchanging of cash for drugs, are we?
See you later. Oh, mate, no proof of that.
I mean, I just watched you pass that person money, and this is my turf. I know you're selling on my turf, mate.
This is your turf? How am I meant to know that?
Yeah, I got a few boys coming. I just thought I'd come check. I'm not pressing you or nothing. I'm just asking what you're doing, to be honest.
Oh, mate, just having a chat. You know, if they happen to take some goods off me, mate, who am I?
Alright. Well, what?
Sharing is caring, you know what I mean? Look
You-
here. Here, how about this? There you go, mate. A little sample for yourself.
Oh. Alright. Have you spoken to any of the boys on the motorbox before around here, mate?
Maybe that's your preferred
Well,
Mate,
mate.
it's all pretty simple shit, I can't lie, but
Mate, no, you're doing well, mate, to be on the garden variety. Fuck, mate, you're doing well. You can tell you've been at it. You got your fucking fertilizer down pat. You've been growing plants for a while.
fertilizer.
Yeah, mate. You know, you got the MPH mix fucking down pat, mate, because you got up to the better stage, better fucking grade bud.
What's MPH?
Oh, fucking nitrogen, fucking potassium, and fucking one other fucking chemical, mate. I'm just saying, like, it's what goes into fertilizer, mate, you know?
Made those words up.
Nah, mate. I put it on the grass there at home, mate.
Nah, you made those words up.
Oh, wait, it's not like blinker forward, mate. It's definitely something that exists.
Since when? I don't know nothing about that, mate.
Nothing about that.
I just speak to the plants, mate. They tell me, give me water.
Give you water.
That's what they get.
You don't give them no fertilizer, mate. You don't feed them at all.
Nah. Still a bit of water, mate. They get their energy from the sun.
You don't give them any fertilizer.
Nah.
Dose, come here.
Yeah, what's up, mate?
This cunt doesn't put any fertilizer in his buds, mate.
Are you fucking serious?
You fucking serious, mate?
Photosynthesis, mate.
You're starving those little babies.
He's up in the score.
Mate, we gotta call the RSPCA. He's basically abusing those pets
He's
ears.
Mate.
fucking lost the plot.
They're asking for it. They are. That's what they want. They tell me, give me water, and that's all they get.
He gave me 5 cigars, so and a baggie of bud. So look, I'm happy to look the other way tonight, mate, but I have to get changed anyway before I say anything to you. So, to be honest, he's right. I don't look the part. Like a monkey man on the bike tonight.
What are you, part of a... Does that say Paris on the back?
No, it's
Je m'appelle... bonjour.
ça va.
Konnichiwa. Yes.
Yeah. You know the funny thing about ça va, mate, is the response to ça va is ça va, 'cause it's how are you and I'm good at the same time. One of those ones.
Sadar. Yeah.
Yeah, mate. Yep. Saddam Hussein. But anyways, mate, we're the Feral Few MC, alright? I'm fucking Marcus Hugh. Yeah,
How
mate.
many's a few?
Oh, never you mind, son.
Because if it's more than 3, I've got to correct you on that one. That's not a few, mate.
Well, it should be a feral conglomerate, mate. It doesn't have the same ring to it, you know what I mean?
Well, no, because conglomerate you think is going to, like, you better off be feral multinational, you know?
Yeah, but we won't get fucking pressed about saying that, you know what I mean, mate?
Is it just the 2 of you? Because that make you the feral couple.
No, mate, there's more than 2.
Oh, mate.
Is there 3? Because that would be a few. That'd be a feral few.
Well, to be honest with you, mate,
Say 4.
he's
4. Feral double day?
quadruple.
Awesome.
Quadruple?
Quadruple.
Foreskin.
Going on, boys.
Yeah, foreskin, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, to be honest, he's got to understand we're definitely not a few. There's more than a few of us. He's probably like,
How many's a
Yeah,
few,
the
mate? I feel
marketplace.
like the syntax here is important.
I guess that depends. We're not really.
That's all you need to know.
I don't think
The feral dozen?
we're like that grammatically correct, mate. That's the problem
Feral
here.
half dozen?
Well, it's more than a half dozen. It's where we get troublesome because it'd be like a Desi something. I don't know, mate. Desi Freeman, maybe the feral Desi Freeman. Yeah, there we go.
The feral octopus? Octagon? The feral octagon?
Yeah, but it sounds so much like Octomum, mate. Like, we can't be doing that.
Oh, octomum. Octomum.
Yeah, mate. Alright. I know you're selling here anyway. You distracted me here on the fucking
Here's some
T's and
fertilizer,
I's.
mate.
What's this?
Fertilizer. Take
Can I
it.
eat that?
No, don't eat it.
Why not?
It's fucking animal shit and fucking bones and fat.
Here's
Yeah,
a
but did you
fucking-
just say it's food? Or...
Here's a plant pot, mate.
Oh, you gotta
Not a
say it?
pot plant.
Hey, mate, just fucking dog the son that was selling on the turf.
Oh, mate.
You don't gotta say it for me.
Nah, mate.
Oh, you figured?
What about you, mate? You gotta say it for me? Oh, that shit.
Oh, I didn't get changed. I'll be back. You got him, boys. You can't believe you gave me a cigar. I'm full gonna smoke this, bro. Yeah, mad. 45 puffs? This guy's a mad cunt, bro. I'm smoking on this all night. That's actually pretty gangster, I'm not gonna lie. Oh, I'll take that. I'm off catching in Sydney, no worries, Westy, thank you. Yeah, it definitely is having to understand both sides. Catch up on this. And like, I was thinking about this actually the other day when it comes to crim cops. So like, one of the bad things about like having a pretty large city, it's actually also a good thing, right? Because it balances itself out. But like, if you have like multiple orgs, factions, and crews, etc., then like, most of the time, those people play a cop on their secondary character. And if there's ever beef between orgs, especially if it becomes OOC beef, those cop characters, right, generally will go harder on the org they're having beef on with in their crim character, right? But what usually ends up happening is because, like, every org usually has at least a couple of people that fucking have, like, a crim secondary character, oh, sorry, a cop secondary character. And, like, it's usually, like, this is just, like, unfortunately, you're going to have this. As long as there's enough people, just, like, there's going to be people that are, like, have maturity levels, which are, like, going to take things more personally than others, right? So there's going to be a few that most likely takes things onto cop that, like, obviously is, like, a bit of meta, a bit of OOC, a bit of OOC salt. But then it'll balance itself out because all those groups usually have people that are doing the cop secondaries, and it'll at least have one or two people doing the same thing, right? But nonetheless, you got to get more people doing both. And that's, I guess that's one of the arguments for having our requirements, but also it's one of the things that pushes people out. Yeah, hit up Zeke. Get Zeke on the cop, man. How you doing, Ozzy? What's crack looking?
For a minute.
What do you gather on this bloke, Jordan? He seems alright.
Yeah, he gave me a fucking cigar and a bag of weed. There is a highway patrol just down the markets there though now.
Yeah, alright. I'm gonna pass you a cigar. You gave me 3. I gave Dose 2. Then we gave 2 each.
Oh yeah, nice.
Fucking, have you puffed on it yet? You get 45 fucking puffs on this cunt.
Fuck me, I'll have to fucking get this doggy.
Fucking, she's classy, smooth. He's got good tobacco he's growing. It should just be the channel point redemption. When you just do it, it should just allow you to put in a name.
I wonder where he fucking got these from.
Don't you farm them? I know how you craft ciggies and that. It's over where garden variety is. There you go.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, mate. Yeah. It's on the same island there. Later, Zeke. I love that fucking redemption. But yeah, mate. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think you can craft it down in the sewers too for fucking bottle caps.
Thanks for the cigars too, mate. You're right. What's your name, brother?
Yeah, my name's Daniel, mate.
Daniel.
Papa just went that away. He went from there over to there.
did he?
I haven't seen him pop out the other side though.
Oh, he's probably looking for you, mate.
It was me. What have I done?
Oh, nothing at all. Are you affiliated with anyone, mate?
Oh, affiliated. What's that mean?
Friends, associates?
What, like a conglomerate?
Yeah, like a conglomerate, mate, yeah.
Ah, mate, maybe.
What? Your voice changed or something? What the fuck?
Whatever do you mean?
Oh, I'm very confused now.
Give me a sec. I feel like I heard something.
Daniel, eh? Well, he seemed alright. I gave us cigars. As long as he's not bringing too much attention down here. You should probably be charging him a tax, but...
Well, we didn't even have to charge him. He just fucking handed it over willingly.
Yeah, so that's the tax, I suppose.
If he gave you a couple of baggies, he gave me a fucking bag of garden variety too.
Yeah, mate, he gave me just one, but I don't mind.
Yeah, he gave me one, and then yeah, we got fucking a few cigars out of him.
Up on that roof, is that important?
Where did you get these cigars, just out of curiosity?
I grow them myself.
Do you feed these cunts fertilizer or what?
Nah.
Fuck me.
I plant them next to potatoes and I let them kill each other. And
I can see the cop.
that's wrong.
He's just pulled into the fucking behind
Yeah, no,
us.
he was up there before he was looking at us.
Oh, taking photos, eh?
Yeah,
It's a zebra crossing we parked
If I'd seen
here.
him, I would have fucking given him the fucking...
mate. Fucking Curious George over here with how much they fucking want to learn.
Seems to be all they fucking do, mate.
Yeah, mate.
It's two-seater.
Yeah, it is actually.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, these ones are.
What the fuck?
Yeah, mate, you get your butt grinded on. How's that feel, nice and warm?
Mate, she's It's hot. I need a towel or something. Fuck me.
Yeah, it's good for the ladies. Gets dessert ready after dinner, you know what I'm saying?
Now I need new pants, bro. Not for the good reason.
Yeah, I need new pants after riding this most of the time too, to be honest.
Mate, you wouldn't be able. You'd have to. There'd have to be more like vibrations than that, wouldn't there? Surely.
Should be. I think that's half the thing with this bike. There's not enough vibrations.
That's part of the fucking lifestyle, mate. You just fucking deal with it.
What about yours? Is yours? Oh yeah, they both got fat
Yeah.
fucking wheels on the back.
Yeah, I feel like Batman.
Fat wheels.
I mean, the fucking front wheel's pretty fat too, to be honest.
Not as much though. It's like maybe 2/3 the size.
Yeah, not as much, but I mean,
What sort of radius is these? 19 inch?
yeah, about that, mate.
Shit. Nah, surely it's bigger, but look at it.
Honestly,
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
21.
21.
When you wonder.
You're right, Daniel, mate. We'll leave you to it. You're a good fella, mate. We're probably going to come see you if you come down to here again on another night, but you're good for the rest of the night, mate.
Do you want to do something about Mr. Black and Blue?
Oh, I was going to go harass him, yeah.
Yeah, let's go pull up.
Oh, he's in here.
Oh, shit, mate. What are you doing standing there?
Oh, watch out.
Well, fuck, you're running in a car park, mate, in front of vehicles. What are you doing?
Well, I was actually tying my shoelaces behind that bollard over there.
Ah.
You guys came screaming around the corner.
Yeah, we entered the car park, mate. Just coming to park in here, mate.
Off like he'd been fucking caught out.
No, that wasn't me.
Oh, enjoy your Greek yogurt.
You've been sprung, buddy.
Sprung.
Or sprunk, as the kids call it these days.
Hey! Spunk, I think they used to call it.
Oh, yep.
Love a good spunking.
So
Do
what
you
have
love a
you
good
guys been up
spunking
to
officer?
today?
Mate, what are you doing?
Cruising around? Well, it's actually a fantastic opportunity. I got an anonymous tip from a generous local, saying that there's been an illegal drug sale in the area.
No.
And
Illegal drug sale?
after patrolling the area, I found you two, or three good-looking roosters, loitering around the area.
Mate, don't call me a rooster, alright? I'm a leopard.
Mate, I'll call you a leopard.
Yeah, I prefer cougar, personally.
Cougar?
Hey!
Yep,
Mate,
yep.
you gotta stay within the same animal class, don't I?
Yeah, cradle snatching's my job.
Dingo. Call you Dingo.
Oh, thanks for the resub. 21 months. You're a legend.
Have you seen anyone suspicious
Thank
in
you.
the area?
2-month streak.
Only you,
That I
mate,
could
to be
think
honest.
of.
Yeah, you were acting pretty suspicious up on the roof and behind that bollard, mate.
Types, running around when people find you.
Test 3-2 on radio.
What you guys got eyes in the back of your head?
No?
What are you talking about, mate? I was fucking facing you.
Yeah, mate. He seen you, and then he told us we have mouths and ears. And he had eyes.
Okay.
Hey, big mate, we just we got one of the boys of blues down here. He's coming asking us for $50, and we're telling him to jog on, mate. You want to come down and have a sus, mate? It's up the postcode 8220, mate, on the 10-4.
Well, look,
Mate, the level of crime in Melbourne these days, you gotta have eagle eyes, yeah? You gotta spot problems before they.
Yeah, it's getting there. But thank you so much, Chippy. Thank you so much for the resub. It's definitely not required, but it's always appreciated, my G. Thank you so much. 2 months in as well. As in the streak, you're a G, dude.
Yeah, look, that is
Mate.
true. Stand out like a sore thumb.
If you were Where's Wooly, mate, I'd fire you. Useless.
Whoa, that's a bit, that's a bit
Point's-
rude.
If you're Wally, mate, the point is you're meant to hide, and you're wearing fluoro.
Well, look, let's be realistic.
More
If I
important, boys, or
wanted
something.
to hide, I would have been hidden. But sometimes you kind of got to, make your presence known so people, decide to make a change in their life.
Careful, Era.
On a rooftop,
Car taunts is good.
no?
Mate, I thought you were
I got
tying your
your-
fucking shoelace behind the bollard.
It got your attention. I was actually, yeah. That was after the fact.
So,
How's
if
that
you-
making your
If
presence
you're
known,
making
then?
yourself known, why don't you just come up and say it? Seems like you're stuck between two fuckholes, mate.
I know to sanitize these responses you're giving us here, mate, because, yeah, I don't know if it's the right thing.
Why
You
not?
get a fact check on this?
Yeah, mate. Yep.
Fact check.
Wait, where's fucking
This bloke's worse than a politician. Has never heard of the word fact check.
Liberal government?
Your facts, mate.
There was no, there was no facts there that was false.
No? Okay, well, answer me then. Were you trying to hide, or were you making yourselves known?
Well,
Where
I
are you
wasn't
boys
making
at?
myself known, but I wasn't trying to hide.
Proof,
Obviously,
gotta jump in my car.
with this fluoro
On my
vest
way.
on,
Sorry.
you're gonna see me from a mile
So
away.
it's some third option that
We're in the
you've
car
yet to
park at
say.
8220.
So it went from, oh yeah, nah, I was hiding, to, oh yeah, nah, I was making myself known. And now it's the third option, is it?
Well, look,
We're in the car park, so like
I'm
right
surprised
next to
if
where
you
we
know
just
what
were
time
before.
of the day fucking is, bro.
look. To be honest,
Yeah, did you ride past us a second ago there, Chich?
Negative.
Oh, hey, Jace,
I
mate.
just flew in, man. I just,
Oh,
catch
g'day,
a
mate. How you
shadow at
going?
the casino.
Good, mate.
What are you up to?
At the penthouse suite.
Talking to the cop around the corner here. You know, it was us.
Oh, there's a copper.
Yeah.
How or why I ended up in the penthouse, mate. Just know I was there.
Yeah, mate, I just imagine you live on large.
Cheers, mate. You're a legend.
All good.
Is Jimmy coming to sort you out, mate?
no. It's not volatile.
No, it is
They
multiplying.
charge me fucking double.
Said you over the difficult time at home, mate.
Weekend.
That sounds like volatile to me.
No, there's no volatility at all.
Right, okay.
It's not like that.
So if you went back to your wife tonight, mate, she'd be totally happy. Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, no, not really.
That sounds like it may be a bit
About
volatile
a
then.
kilometre.
Sensitive.
1.2 out.
Well, it
Think
just
my daily
depends on
rules?
At work, mate. Is that what's doing her head in?
potentially maybe putting up with the same people all day, every day.
Put down the vest, mate. It's never too late to make a change.
Cat
We all
box?
know you don't get paid enough, mate.
Yeah, that is true. I'm fucking eating the days off the calendar.
Mate, look at the people standing around, you know. At some point, you know, none of us come out with, you know, say, a fluoro vest or a jacket on. I think that's what that is. But, you know, at some point you got to pick it up, you know what I mean? But you can always put it back down, especially in your case.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, what are you offering? Are you offering something?
No,
Oh,
offering you perspective.
true.
A new view on life,
Vision.
sir.
But unfortunately, this is kind of all I
Alternatives.
know. You know what I mean? Like, my old man was a police officer, highly decorated. My mother was a highly decorated police officer.
That's
So it's
wow.
kind of in my blood, unfortunately.
Yeah, my cat came first place in the fucking.
You know, I get
Melbourne
these set
show,
up.
mate. But you got to forge your own path. You know what I mean?
That is true. That is true.
You can't look. I understand, mate. You've been set in your ways for a while, but that's no reason for you to be like, "Oh, it's all I know." You've got to
don't
go
need
out
be
there
a
and
sheep,
find
mate.
it.
You can be
Yeah, that's impressed. You got it done well.
Thanks, mate. You know me, Red.
Yeah, no, look, I do appreciate the.
Press on the press, lad. He kept the press vest and it pops through. There's no way.
Maybe
But then,
one of
but what,
Mate.
what's my cousin gonna say then?
your cousin.
I sure as that cancel my cigar emote doing those two.
Who cares what your cousin thinks?
Who
mate?
asked about your cousin?
They're barely family at that point.
Wait, is she good looking? I'll do your cousin.
Who's your cousin?
I haven't
Hey.
spoken
Is she
to him
hot?
in years.
Oh, it's a bloke. Oh, that's not my thing.
Ah, they had. I'm
Yeah.
out of here.
I think I'm with Dose. I'm leaving. I've had enough of this.
Fair enough.
Look what you've done, mate.
That's all right. Look,
Are you meant to engage with the public?
You're getting on my bike with me, Dose, mate.
Shit, sorry, mate.
sorry, what'd you say?
Are you meant to be engaging in the public if you're scaring them away?
Go on, me, Chich, mate.
He's a good gentleman.
Oh, you're repairing? Oh, did you just repair mine by accident? I hope not.
X-Mark. Sorry, mate. Sorry, bud.
You're right, mate.
Things figured out.
You're repairing it twice. Was he a medicine fella? Going down to the market for a little sec, hey?
I need to go to the old chop shop. but we'll go to the markets, yeah.
Oh yeah, we can go anywhere you want, mate. Just want to have a chat. That's all. Just want to where there's no cops. Wait, you want to go to the garage now? The shop garage, or actually like the fucking place where you do them up? Whoops.
I'm thinking over there, postcode 10,000.
10,000. Yeah, it's okay. Oh, Jazz got in though after Raw stole it. No, it's actually good. I'd have to fix the timings up a little bit on when or not it's like you can catch again. But as soon as like the person's away, the next person should be able to catch. I'm just leaving Chich behind. Oh, I've got some fucking Discord DMs I need to check. Holy shit. Did you move back to normal balls, Jazz? Must have. Must have. I thought those balls were the master of all balls. There's a Chich in his way here. How's he drive, eh? Alright, he's not too bad. Alright, you're just doing up your car, are ya?
Negative, mate. I need to see what's going on inside my chop shop.
Oh, you're choppy.
Yeah, mate. Yeah.
Alright, no worries. Let's have a chat quickly then. What's it saying? What are you up to tonight, mate? What's your plans?
Oh, not a lot, mate. Not a lot.
Yep.
I'll be in for a quick one tonight. You know, not too much going on, but I can do a few things.
Yeah, easy. Alright. Just one second, we can hit up on the radio. Yeah, mate.
With this fucking meth job shit, like if you do like 3 runs or 4 runs, does it like stop you from doing anymore?
You just gotta keep saying yes, do more runs.
Yeah, no, I did that, but like I did 4 in a row and then I accepted the 5th one and it just disappeared once I went to go at Bendigo.
I've not had that happen. I've done up to 5 every time, but I've just gotten sick of it by that point.
Yeah, I've done 4 now. It's my 5th, but
Yeah,
like,
you'd be on your map.
it's disappeared.
Still, like the red marker should still be on your map.
It's not there anymore. As soon as I went out of like Bendigo, what the fuck am I call it? The GPS like disappeared.
Yeah, it's probably just wigged out, mate.
Fuck, that's
Yeah, mate.
like 250 before because I fucking accidentally cancelled it.
It's not that expensive.
250 fucking dirty per. Fuck, that's expensive for me. I don't sell drugs. I smoke them.
Yeah, evidently. Alright, well,
What are you trying to say?
I was going to try and get you to rob a house, mate. Did you ever get in any houses last night, or?
Nah, but
GPS bug.
Nigel can walk through that in the morning. That'll be definitely a morning job. But I need I'll just need some materials for lockpicks and that.
I'm gonna spend another 250 dirty.
I can sort you out and show you how to get some of that, mate. Let me just hit Jimmy up one more time on the radio. But I'll show you where you can make the lockpicks. I'll let you suss out your chop.
Up
Yeah.
Up around the way, yeah, I've got that sorted out.
Yeah, I see you got to hit the metal waste. I'll let you do what you need to do in your chop garage, and how about you give me a ring when you're free? Yeah?
No worries, mate.
Easy.
Take it easy, eh?
You too, G. Alright, I reckon it's still there. I don't reckon it's gone, skis, because I reckon your route's just gone, but not the fucking, guy to get your supplies from. Like, look on your Google Maps for bloody GPS, what's it called, supplier. So you'll be a little red dude. Yeah, that's one I think I sent you the fix for.
You sure?
Like, do you still have a red dude on your...
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because like, you can do other things. He stays there all night. I've like done a run and not come back to it for like an hour and he's still chilling, you know what I mean?
Fucking GPS.
If it's on Roxwood or near Bendigo, it could just be that, like, you know, Roxwood fucking Google Maps.
I'm sure there's that area up there. Fucked.
What can I say? I'm not always right. I hope not. Raw's always right.
Regardless of what
Yeah.
Actually, one second. I'm choked up.
Yeah, you need to buy a new fucking phone, mate. You get a new Android update on it or something. I think you're just a bit busted there, old Jimmy. Fix your script. Oh, Mark's giving me a ring.
Nah, not not me. Against, nah.
Yeah, mate.
Definitely not use the arrow.
Yeah, g'day there, Marcus. What's going on, pal?
Oh, you know, just
Fucking
big and
mate,
back beating
sure.
bull, mate. I was just riding around trying to figure out what the fuck I'm doing. What are you doing?
Oh, mate, I'm just walking around the factory, you know, sussing the happenings.
And this cunt's in
things,
fucking inside the
things.
store.
Do you not know how to do anything in there, mate?
Nah, I can definitely work something out, but hey, just when you fly out tonight, mate, you just want to think about on the nod, just giving us a buzz.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, of course.
Thanks, mate. Just before you fly out tonight, thank you. Legendary.
Oh, wait, yeah, before I fly out tonight, so... Yeah, gotcha, yeah.
Well, after you fly out.
Okay, yeah, mate, yeah.
3, 2, pal. I'll
3,
catch you
2,
later.
Roger Dodge.
Roger.
Rubber ducky. What am I doing, chat? I'm fucking lost here. I'm fucking lost, mate. Oh, fuck, it caught me off, Liquor. Like, you guys saying that in chat? Ah! Oh, fuck. I need to compose myself.
I can run.
Oh, yeah, fuck. The GPS thing made me lose my composure. That phone call made me lose composure. That just fucking made me lose my composure. I thought I was dead. I thought I was gone. What am I doing? I want to do some house robberies. I want to take Chich house robbing, but I'm just gonna go fucking do it, I think, by myself. I'm gonna go buy some food. Jesus Christ. What am I looking at? I gave my baguettes to Sonos. Get the Pokemans. Raw style, innit? I just nearly fucking died. I'm pretty sure my heart's fallen out my fucking asshole. I nearly crashed into that. You see that little fucking scratch on the Bowser? That's my fucking bike, mate. Oh my god. I bounced off of it, man.
Fucking hell, mate. Be careful.
I'm not feeling so good. What were we doing? I was gonna go rob houses, but I'm fucking... I don't know if that's wise. I don't know how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, look, I don't know. We turned that around on that cop somehow.
Yeah, what happened back there?
For,
He's in
oh, we ended up telling him to
mate.
leave, and then he fucking left.
I'm like, I got enough of it, mate. I was like, I don't know what the fuck I can do with this. And then Chich was doing stuff, and I thought, fuck, I'll just go do some house robberies or something, and I nearly died. So now I'm just standing here begging for money. Got any change?
I actually don't.
Yeah, please. Any change?
You got any change, mate?
Change.
Yeah, I can give you some change, mate. Come here. Give you one of these.
Oh
Give you
yeah.
one of these.
Yep.
And one of these.
Yeah, I'm gonna step down from VP, and I'm gonna stay as a beggar on the streets. Bum. I'll be bum man.
Yeah, nice.
Yep.
Sounds like it's much more profitable.
At this point, yes. Well, what do you guys want to do? I think you can do houses and up to 3 people, eh? You want guys just do houses together and make up some fucking shitty excuses while we're in there?
Yeah, why not?
Why
Yeah,
not?
do something together, you know.
Yeah. Kumbaya, but it's not that way this apparently fucking Prez said. Thank you, Ro.
Oh, that's alright. I got something up my sleeve.
Wait, where's your... You don't have any sleeves, mate?
Yeah, my invisible sleeves.
Yeah, you can have 4 people in a house robbery.
Oh, so when Chich is done, we bring him in.
You get the same XP, or is it just like
I don't know. I'm just
whoever
looking at
opens
says
it up
group size
first?
1 to 4.
This makes it quicker, surely.
Shared. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna buy some armor because I've got none, and I evidently need it because I'm a fucking idiot. Yep. And
I should buy some too, honestly.
yeah. And I've got a car.
Yeah.
We could also just steal one. We could be proper criminals.
I can just whip out my salt and I'll just take all the drugs out of it.
Yeah, we got a screwdriver in the crew storage. You want to switch the plates out?
Oh, I don't give a fuck.
Oh yeah, mad. All right. I'll go get some armor.
Right, I don't
It's all meet back here or something.
Yeah, righto.
Yeah, it's probably the easiest. All right, thank
You
you.
want to fucking tee up Cheech?
He's doing something in his shoppy, I think, and then he'd be up for it. I'll hit up on the radio, but
Oh yeah, I turned my radio down because it was loud as fuck and old mate was talking.
yeah.
Do we need a 4-door? I've got a 4-door car.
Oh, I think
Yeah, my
John's
phone's
on
a
it.
4-door.
Ah, sweet.
How long until you bloody get this chop stuff done there, Cheech? We'll give him another ring. Give him a ring. Give him a call. Alright, let's buy some armor, steel plates. Let's buy 4 and put 1 on, because I normally carry 3, so. Yeah, I should be checking my undies. There's like multiple clips of me just fucking absolutely shitting myself. It's like a common occurrence. Put the cigar back. Alright, that's where it's at. There's food in. I'm gonna give Chich a call. Give old Chich a call. That one.
Your call is
he's already out.
to an automatic voice message system.
Yeah, I don't think Chich is around, so I'll just get changed and yeah, be good to go. Is that your horn, mate? Because that sounds uber sus. I thought that was cops rocking up. I'm just going down to get changed, mate. Going down to get changed. That thing's... Is that your Cardos? Oh my god. Did you just get it stuck? Let's get changed quickly. That's mad.
Undercover cop car, mate.
Full looks like it too. Full looks like it too, bro.
Yeah, I tried to keep the body stock so it doesn't look too suspicious, but it's fully, you know, modified.
Monkey man. Alright. Now where to do it? Shopping cart. Is that good? Why is it not letting me do this? Alright, cash. I just take us, meet us to the garage. I'll put my bike away. Let's go, chat. We're gonna do some houses together. We could actually do a store robbery too. We could all just bring hatchets and if we get pressed by the cop, just try and stab him. Try and stab Wasty. That'd make a good clip. Just out in the Miranda garage there, Dosey. We go back up the top there. This is nice. Mad Manor, how you doing? Little Soul Garage. Oh, not Little Soul Garage, Little Soul Petrol Station. How you doing, mate? I thought that was straight Walter, mate.
The one just up here, mate?
Yeah, I think that's fucking Jordan was gonna make us there. Yeah, funny seeing you around, mate, huh? Maybe. Oh, I didn't put my seatbelt on. Oh.
Fuck, you're alright, mate.
Got my seatbelt, mate.
Mate, that's a fine.
That's a fucking, that's 25 resin. Jordan, where are you, mate?
I'm just at the fucking clothing store. In like the Little Soul clothing store.
Oh, we were just there, I'm pretty sure. That's the one you picked me up
The
on.
one that we're just at.
Yep. On our way, mate. I think he's got a car too, though. I think he got his Sultan already, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we can just take his.
Oh, yeah, this looks good too, though. But yeah, no, man. Selling a bit of drugs in the area.
Oh, the handling is crazy on it.
On this. I mean, sorry, on this.
Yeah, it doesn't slide out or anything.
Yeah, right.
Like the salt.
Taking the Sultan then.
Yeah, fuck it.
Who wants to do the honours of the app, mate? I can do the app if you want.
Everyone, yeah.
You know, it's easy. Buddy Chich, mate, he's already flying out, mate. He's gone.
Seatbelts.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yep, yeah, seat belts.
You have a lockpick on you?
Catch, look out. I'll quickly run off if you guys to chat. You need to get some Pokeballs there too, Mad Manor. It says buy item, Pokeball 1, like that. Alright. Here's a raffle for you guys to chat as well. 100k. Let's go on. Yeah, righty. I need some fucking Wizzy PayPals, mate.
number 5, mate. Yeah.
Yep, you're just there. Boom. You only have 50 chips here to use exclamation mark trying to get into this raffle. That's for 100k, mate.
Oh, let's fucking do it.
You devil.
I wouldn't mind doing a fleece a bank one time. The other night there was 9 police officers.
We fucking, I think the stuff for it is ick around. He's got to find it. I don't know how to do the banks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I'm sure you need some sort of stuff from there.
Get in there, man. But how you been, bro? What you been playing? Been hanging out? I can see you back on the role play and that, but like, what have you been up to, dude? It's been a hot minute.
That's the one.
Yeah, there's a bit of stuff there.
There's the hacker.
Oh, it would have got reset at one point and then it got properly reset. It's a new system now.
Do you reckon we'll need that?
Oh, probably.
For boosting.
I don't know. I don't have the heist dongle. It should tell you what you need on there, doesn't it?
Yeah, if you have the heist dongle, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe like,
Got a job, bro. It's a stitch up. Yeah, mate. Well, that's how it usually works, right? You gotta work and pay rent and buy food and do something, right? Can't just do nothing. Oh yeah, that's alright, bro. That's alright. Because I haven't seen you in a minute. I didn't play Supernova 1.0, so I don't know if you came to that, played that. I don't know if you played different games. I mean, we're friends on Steam, so you know. But you're mad, bro. What are you doing? And if you don't want to, you don't have to.
Oh yeah, I'm almost level 4 for house robberies.
I was paying attention. To be honest, I've not even robbed a house before.
Is it in fucking?
Oh, it's pretty easy, mate. Pretty easy.
Yeah, it's in an overwrap. Yeah, so I'm nearly level 2. That's it. But I don't see any other things.
Done it before, just not around here.
Does everyone have a lockpick, or do you guys need a lockpick? I've got one on me.
Yeah, I got one on me too.
Yeah. Yeah, fuck. What it comes up in your Nova app? Fucking dose.
I've got my house robbery and pickpocketing.
That's it. Right. And you don't see your grow in there. That's only in the plants. You see.
Yeah, that's only in the plant section.
Yeah, in the table. And then when you deal, you can only see it in your eyes, eh?
Yeah, you can see it then, and you can also see it on your burner phone too.
Oh.
No, not for plants. Sorry, just your respect.
Yes, your respect. No, that makes sense, but. All right, but we should be making burner phones and giving them to cunts when we press them about selling in our area. To be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can get
SIM cards
yeah,
and we can charge people.
Cards, don't we? Yeah.
Like 20 grand or something.
That's what I used to do when we used to have like a turf.
This one you doing a dose?
Yeah, I'll do this one.
Hectic. I'm not the best at the whole picking this. It fucks you up every time. And man, I've got 100k chippies. They're 5k each for normal Pokeballs. Different concepts of Pokeballs. There's 10 Pokeballs. But if you use exclamation mark commands, I'll bring them all into chat for you. We on?
You guys start at the other end and
start over that side.
There's no one here. Alright.
You can get both the bedside tables, the bed.
Pretty far away, so we could have time here. Why, you're in my pocket? It's a good notification, I thought. I thought it was an excellent notification. It's almost as good as I'm in yours. I'm in yours, I'm in yours, I'm in yours. I can't even say it that quick, lad. Gonna get that last one.
Yeah.
I'll get outside. I'm gonna start smoking, still near.
The alarm's been set, let's go.
You want a dog to chase? Oh!
Come out.
That's not good. Get in this car. I've been getting tornadoed heaps lately.
Yeah, I did another one. Yeah.
I don't know if I can leave it here.
You're alright, leave it here?
Watch out, watch out.
I reckon that'll tornado again.
No, it was me.
What was it?
Shouldn't tornado. Yeah, it was me, but I fixed that up.
Yeah, it's fucked now. He's full broken it down. This is my drift
Andrew
car.
Tafe will be
The old prop tornado. Yeah, it's because people was cats
pretty quick
and.
because that Andrew Tafe, mate, is thirsty.
Yeah, mate. What I'm doing is I'm just parking here. Like I'd rather pretend it was us than. Oh, mate, there's your priority's poor car.
Yeah.
But yeah, mate. Yeah. Fucking what is it? Your Wade baggy? Was it your cat? What was it? What do you reckon?
I think it might have been. I don't know. Usually I have a cat on me, but that must not be the cat.
Yeah, it's my weed baggie normally that does it on my cat. I notice. So it happens at my motel all the fucking time.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, it's just because of props.
I've had it happen to my motel before.
But yeah, it's like a Mitsubishi Legdom Stagia, basically. It goes pretty fucking hard. Oh, I nearly just got killed us all. I'm sorry. I only put my seatbelt on. Oh my god. I'm so dumb, like, keep doing that.
Alright, where's the next one at?
Yeah, let's get fuel and I'll get the next one boosted.
Do you want me to actually start it up? Because we'll get garages.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah, we can
Just down the road.
We'll do this one and then we'll fucking make you the group leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you said that before, I didn't think about that. Oh, sorry, mate. Is it a bad idea to be smoking while I fill the car up?
Nah, mate, nah.
Siggy?
You've already fucking lit it,
Ah,
mate.
fuck.
She's alright.
It's a cigar. It doesn't burn as hot. How you doing, Trash Panda, by the way? Let's crack a like. I'm running another off a few guys. The chippies out. How you doing, Raven, as well, G-Star?
Nah, mate, you'll put a cigarette
You liked
in
it?
petrol. It's only when you light the cunt.
I do a little $1 because we did one recently. Just because I feel like you guys did the chippies so you can bet you gamble more. Yeah, mate, I've been around plenty of things. A petrol, sniffed them, drank them, fucking pissed them, you know what I mean? Like, you just get around it.
Yeah.
1.5 million chips. You got a few chippies. It's a naked flame. Yeah, exactly. That is actually true. I was talking about that in Discord the other day for these guys, which is funny. Oh, he's carrying out a bucket of shit, this gun.
Yeah.
Well, there's our top chippies. Jazz has actually got 1 billion. Look, I just tell the cops that we are cops, mate, and they won't ask a fucking question.
Yeah, exactly right.
Do you still have your lockpick there, Dose, mate, or is it busted?
No, I've still got it there, mate. Yeah.
Beauty.
I'll start her up.
Yeah, no worries. And make sure you guys use Xbox join for that raffle. I think it's only 25k, it's a bit cheaper. Should I sit at the front as a getaway driver just ready to go? Distract him or something.
Up to you, I don't care.
Yeah, it feels like 3's too many inside, that's for sure.
I think we'll have to leave the group real quick.
Why is that?
So I can start. I think.
Oh, yep, no, there's one just here, that's why I fucking...
Oh yes.
Ooh, gifted a sub to Thomas?
Let's go.
Yeah, I'll just wait in the car.
Yeah, I didn't see that one.
Is that the alarm going off for this?
Yeah, can you hear the sirens?
Yeah, I can hear the alarm going off,
What
yeah.
the fuck?
Are you alright, Dose, mate? You're having a fucking moment. Thank you for the gifted sub,
I
too.
can't actually do anything to this door.
It's the next one anyway, it's this one here, I'm pretty sure.
I heard some siren.
Yeah, it's this one. I'll just wait outside. I'll wait outside for you boys so I can distract the cops if I need.
Alright.
Fucking hell. Thank you so much for the gifted sub, dude. You're an absolute fucking legend. Gifted 24 subs in total as well, Thomas, man. Hey, and this is Mr. Hanson, eh, isn't it? I can always forget. I always forget to Hanson. I should, though. I should. How could I? And thank you, Big Trash, as well. There you go. Enjoy the sub. You get the extra special gifts. Years ago with the sport. He's been around for years too. Like, these are guys that are all from New Spark, man. And I was thinking about this the other day. Like, I was a bit worried when I started streaming again a few months back, being like, is my community going to come back? Is there even a community there? And then I streamed and like, at first people weren't there, and then it's actually like more people turned up than I thought. And then like just throughout like time goes on, people are like, holy shit, he's still around. Don still streams. He still exists. And that's it's nice. I forget. And I don't know. Sometimes you get in your head about shit, right? So you don't think that yeah, shit's there when it really is. But yeah, fat hype indeed. And who got this win? He is always lurking, 100% too. 25k, split between two, 12.5 each. But yeah, big love to you guys in chat. Hope you guys enjoy. No, I wasn't talking about you, Liquor, when I talked about the community here. I was saying you could... when I was saying that, I was specifically not talking about Liquor. Nah, that's it. I'm going to crash out now. They're out. Are the cops coming? Oh no! No!
I fucking told you, man.
Fuck.
Is she fucked or not?
Nah, she's good. She's good. She's good. You're pretty quiet. No, I love a lurk butt, and thank you too, Luke. You are so right. She's all right, mate. I'm going to the fucking truck stop to fix this. All right, Donks, we need to fix where the fuck's going on with you, mate, because that's the place of the road.
Maybe it's my backpack or something.
Oh, maybe. I reckon that'd probably be it, actually. But your backpack's to go, isn't it? You need your backpack.
Yeah.
You know, suck 'em toes for TBT.
That's alright.
I was actually telling everyone the other night how jealous I was when you got promoted in TBT and I didn't. And I was like, this is fucked, bro. Nick just turned up. He's been here for 2 weeks, man. And then he gets promoted. I've been here for like 2 months. This is fucked. Well, I was not doing my hours. Oh, fuck. It's funny like, how things get put into perspective for you. And I ended up like, really liking you too, obviously. I was just like, it's LT. I want to get promoted. I want to be like Raw. Yeah. We just have to fucking, you know, maybe have to do the old, fucking fix me please a couple of columns every now and again.
Yeah.
Just before the car. Oh, the cars. Oh, we're dying. We're not. We're good. I think it's the bag. That's what he said. Because the weed and the not the weed pocket, the weed baggie, the weed seed baggie, and the cat I wear regularly, but it does still do it to me sometimes.
I'll pay for this one, mate.
Oh, you sure, mate?
Yeah.
Because I've been getting them on the bikes, right? And I've got the weed little seed baggie on me permanently in the cat. What do you have that you're wearing at the moment? It's your bag? You have a cat and a seed baggie, eh?
No, I don't have a cat. Do I?
No cat?
No cat. Just the bag and the seed sack.
Well, it could be the seed sack if it's happening to me too.
Yeah.
I should have a cat, but I can't see it.
Yeah, it fell off when we went to the last house. You just need to put it in my glovey and put it back on. It'll be all good. That's what I do.
Just take me out to the garage out here, actually.
Yep. I actually reckon it's the seed baggie, because me and Dose both have seed baggies, and it happens to me every now and again, pretty rarely, and it happened to Dose twice in a row. So
that's fixed for me, so...
Yeah, it's fixed for me too, I think. But yeah, if you just put the cat in the glovey and put it back on, it'll pop back on your shoulder, mate.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah. I have to do it all the time.
That's the first time it's disappeared for me.
Can I change my insight? Look, am I right? Am I right? I missed something here. Meow. How you doing, Tinsy? Is that what I missed? Was it just a meow? What's going on, meow? Baseball bats do it to you as well. It's probably all most of the props. But like, if me and him both run the seed baggie, gotta be that. Right, let's do this group stuff now.
Have you guys joined the group?
Yeah, I joined it.
Yes, there's another invite.
Are the plates you buy from ammunition always on 25 durability, or do they just die that quickly?
No, they always are.
Yeah, did you get that invite, mate?
We have a sussy. Yeah, Canberra now. Yeah, I think Torbeck can get the full plates.
Does it only give you 25?
Nah, full plates give you more. They have 75s.
So I'm joining you on my bed.
Nope, that's not the wrong.
Ah, we got a garage first.
Unless you need me, do you need me?
There you go, boys. What's that, Jimmy?
It's up to you, mate.
Oh, it hasn't ran after 3 throws. What are you looking for?
If you got enough people in there, do it by yourself. I'm just, doing some F runs, getting some shit.
No, we can bring another one if you want, mate. I was just going to be the driver. You can jump in the house with them if you want.
No, I'll let him explore by himself. I'm gonna do some effort and get some shit for us.
It's Dose and fucking Jordan, mate. It's not the Freshies, mate.
Oh, nah, fucking nah. Dose has got this.
I thought you were lonely, mate. You're screaming, I want friends there, basically, mate. How your kneecaps feel, by the way?
Oh, look, they're fucking bruised and battered, alright? They're bruised and battered.
Normal Tuesday for you then, mate. Jesus Christ.
But nah, look, I'm good.
I love this car. Whereabouts is it we have to go here?
I'll just put a marker on it.
Oh, did you? Legendary. Equipped Great Ball. There you go, Mr. Roy. He's buying Great Balls. Oh shit, he's changing it up.
Do appreciate that.
Sorry, Jimmy, mate. I was just ignoring you, mate. Was it important what you said, or can I continue ignoring you?
You can continue ignoring me, but I was just saying cheers to the info. Like, I do appreciate it.
You're welcome, mate.
Actually,
You're welcome.
I'm doing some work for once.
Is he really quiet for you, Doze? I'm talking about you, Marcus, by the way.
Me, you know, I would be quiet, to be honest, mate.
Nah, Marcus, it's not too quiet, mate.
I think it's just me. I can hear everyone else fine, but you're just really quiet for me.
Some people keep saying that about me, mate, but it's like, everyone else, but Vivian said I was quiet, right? And I know that my voice box can be a bit funny, but like, I don't know. I know I need to raise my voice, you know. Oh shit.
Yeah, normally I can hear you fine, but I don't know. Tonight you just sound fucking quiet.
Maybe I do need to change something around my voice box. I'll have a sus, mate, at some point. Good night, Daddy. Oh, good night, Theo. That's so cute. Thank you. Good night, buddy. Love you, mate. And did you get a Pokemon to say, go away with? You got Squirtle. Nice. What a catch too. What are you at on Bill's PC, Jazz? Jazz has got like 45 catches on Pokemon. If you guys do exclamation mark Pokey in chat and then space catches, it shows you like the leaderboard of the catches and Pokemon. E-Leaf. Oh. Made it through, thank God. I thought we were dying there. Miscalculated that corner. Oh no, sorry boys. Oh. You're right.
Yeah, mate.
And put seatbelts on for, I suppose.
I hate when you launch off down a fucking hill and you just know you're gonna crash.
Yeah. I'm usually better at like picking the middle of those lanes so you have a bit of chance to dodge them, but yeah, I didn't do well there. No, I've never done a garage. I actually might come and solve you boys and suss what it's like. Are they bigger?
There's this, there's a new bloody crew.
Eclipse something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to get into it, but we couldn't get nothing, eh?
Wonder who they are.
Yeah, who's running them? Oh, this is mad. Stripe actually is the garage, bro. What the fuck?
Yeah, this is the good one.
He ended that one from over here somewhere, and was it? It's actually the other side, but anyway.
Same.
Yeah, the road's over there. There you go. Was it here? Is it?
Yeah, right here, mate.
Is it this one in front of us or behind us?
Yeah, no, there's still right here.
I'll park up like this then. Nice. Pokédex on. What do you got there in your Pokédex? I actually want to come and have a suss of this. This looks sick, I'm not gonna lie. Got heaps of Pokemon, dude. Jesus Christ. Oh, we should get our gun ready, eh?
This one's very, very sensitive.
Might try that one again in a second. Might take a second for it to load up. Except my new crew spray. Oh, we can metagame it. We can metagame, chat. We know who it is. We know who it is. There you go. No, I'm pretty sure I already knew that always, so I'm not gonna. Is it not gonna work? Nah, hate ya. Sorry, Jazz. It should. One of them should. Is it blocking the queue? I'll have a look. I'll have a look in a second, because it'll pop up. A cop's gonna rock up on us here. He's doing this last one. Let's get out of here. Oh, what's this new cruise spray, huh? Is it gonna be cool? I'm excited to see it. Are we gonna get pressed here on the beach? It's gonna roll outside. Cops here.
that makes sense.
Hey, what's going on here?
I'm just parking my police car, mate, that's all.
Police car? This is not a police car.
Isn't it?
No,
Do
it's not.
fix me now, or
Yeah. What's up, mate?
You mind having a chat, sir?
I can chat from here, mate. What's the problem?
Well, I just want to ask you a couple of questions about what you're doing in the area.
Do it in the area.
Right, mate, we're coming.
I just came down here for my kid's dance recital.
People everywhere, be careful.
Hey, my windows.
Yeah, fuck that window.
I don't know. You have yourself a good day.
What? Yeah, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Go. What are you selling for this fucking house? I think they're onto us.
Sorry, mate.
Fairly sure they were onto us pretty hard, mate.
We didn't even set the alarm off, did we?
I think we did.
I didn't hear any alarm.
You don't hear alarms in the houses. It's a silent alarm.
Oh, well, fuck.
Yeah. You know, that's right, 2 dudes in a dose.
Yeah, look out for, I'll keep in mind we got that 4-door as well at the clothes shop.
Yeah, gotcha, mate. So they can make that jump. I don't think these guys got the balls.
Oh, he fucked it.
Did they fuck it? Nice.
You always
He
smash
fucked it. He's
it,
on his
mate.
lid. Oh, no, he come back down, but he fucked that one. He just got the one behind.
Sorry.
We got another one here.
Snap some ankles.
Ankles is what I do, mate. Ankles is what I do.
Oh, he's getting nervous. He's getting nervous. Holy fucking shit.
Snap the red one's ankles. He's fucking cruising down there.
Yeah, mate, he's gone.
He got a bit exterior sorted there.
Yeah, big stiffy. That fella. Oh, he was waiting so I did the ankle breakthrough there. So where's that 4-door you had at the clothes shop? That's right.
At the clothes shop, but I think the engine's
little
about
one.
50 at the moment.
Yeah, it's alright. That's alright. It's good to know there's a backup.
Oh, snapped his ankles.
That's what we want to see, mate.
Red one's on yellow.
Do that, mate. Later. Oh, that's not good. That's the right one, fuck.
Nice distance.
Woo! That was fucking close.
Not even close, mate. Oh, shit.
Oh, fuck, did he hit the roof?
Did he? Yeah, nice. That's what I was trying to do.
No eyes at the moment. Black one's catching up. Yeah, I think he's seen, but long eyes at the moment.
Yeah, it's all good, mate.
Oh, we've lost them. We've fucking lost them.
Unless he predicts. He just jumped off. Yeah, no, they didn't see. We're gone.
No predict, mate. No predict. That's what you got to see.
The red one's fucking way too excited, mate.
He was going.
Off the jump.
He was going, mate. It's just still a little drive for a little bit, but it's not going anywhere near town. It's not in the south, mate. Off the Doddenskins, mate. That's what they call me. DonHulieo.
We're the real police officers.
That's what I said to him when I came out. He was like, you're not a cop. Well, I put his park in my cop car, mate. Don't mind me. Well, should we sort out what are the good shit from the garages, Dose, mate? Tell us to go here, because I have no idea.
So you get a lot of rope hook.
Yep, so ATM stuff.
Yeah, I'm guessing so. Yeah.
Yeah, rope hooks are ATMs, those, yeah.
I don't know if there are any fucking.
Yeah, anti-lag systems, jump start cables.
So those you can chuck into the bloody crusher, right?
I think the jump cables you can't.
No, you jump cables you can. You can, yeah.
Oh, you can? Yeah, I can't recycle them. I tried to last time.
Yeah, you say they go in the crusher at the chop garage, mate, where the chop shop is.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. Yes, I've got no car parts. We'll take you there to that fucking joint where the car parts are then, get that sorted. But I've got like a bunch of like dirty sponges, grease stained fucking thermometers, whatever the fuck it is, timer, some charcoal.
Yeah, I got a driver set.
Yeah, is that rubbish?
Recycle that. Yeah, you can recycle that. Yeah, I got one of those. I think that's for meth.
We didn't need it for meth. You can use it to craft something,
really?
maybe.
Maybe. I know you can recycle that too, but I don't know, it might be worth keeping.
Nah, well, we just cooked meth there, Dose. Yesterday we got 39% purity meth and 37.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, and it's bloody, not a part of the process at all. That's what Jimmy's going to get meth supplies. Twin Cities just waking up, early bird gets the worm, wake and bake, get my tabs in order, stay lit, have a blessed day. Thank you, Twin Cities. Thank you for the lurky G-Star. Yeah, mate, we're just getting the supplies at least for us. Right, well, let's get you to get in here so you can recycle the car parts. Yeah, so your anti-lag kit and your jumper cables will all go into this sucker here. Just to our left now.
Yes.
I'm just going to get the mats and probably donate them all myself.
Yeah, that's probably what I'll do. I think most of the shit I got.
Ooh. And Jazz is hitting alert, thank you.
All this, I can't be fucked. Someone else can have all this. I just want the XP, mate.
Yeah, just chuck it in the glovey, or we'll just chuck it all in the bloody crew storage anyway. Just donate it all.
Yeah.
Easy. Did you recycle that?
Nah, can't be fucked.
Oh yeah, just chuck it in the glovey then. Well, the boot's probably easier actually. Might not be enough space. Yeah.
Oh yeah, she's got 50 kilos in here, mate. Plenty.
Yeah, mate. Plenty of space in the boot, might as well.
Might chuck the garbage in there as well if that's all good, mate.
Yeah, just chuck it all in the boot, mate. I don't mind. I'll just say I'm moving house if they ask questions. Oh. Yeah. Should we do another house then? I'll repair the car and we'll just fucking do it. Yeah, I think, yeah, I'll do it now. I'll just do it while we're doing this. Let's get in. We've got another Amaldo. I've never seen one of those before. Let's go.
Grove Street.
Grove Street, eh? Just there. I'm going to stay in the car this time, I think, because they rocked up pretty quickly, and they're going to be sussing us now.
I'm going to fucking post on Twitter.
You posted it or they posted?
No, I'm going to post on Twitter, fucking, not mine, but I bet someone's ankles are pretty sore.
Oh, nice.
Ah, nice close one.
Yeah, mate, nice close shave, mate. Right, I'm going to stay in the car, but boys, because I'll get fuel first too, just in case.
Yeah, I might run down while you do. How much fuel do you got? 60?
60, yeah.
Yeah. Should we fucking run down now?
Run down now and I'll meet you there. To be honest, I won't be long.
Yeah. Yep.
You gonna head down there too, Jordan? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just posting on Twitter. Fucking retweet me.
Oh, yeah, choose. I better retweet him too. I was talking to Marcus there normally. Look at this. Where to see you aggravating the cops. Oh. Got a little like by me. Bit of cheekiness. Let's just have keys for this too. Alright, pulling up, getting ready to go for another pursuit.
Good Lord, you're a dick.
You tried to kill my friend.
Hey, man, I just seen Brandon Roberts, man. Promoting this shit, man, on the east side with the petition and shit.
Where is it? My eyes are
I don't know what they got going on. They tripping.
My eyes are a bit funny. I can't really see at the moment.
Is it the back door?
Yeah, you might have to guide me. I can't really see anything.
Man, oh shit, look at that!
Where am I?
Yeah, Jordan, you're his eyes, mate, I think.
Yeah, we got it.
Yep. This one, I actually might pull around the backside so you guys can jump the fence when you come out.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
We just set the alarm off. Let's fucking speed run.
If you guys jump the back fence, I'm just there. So if you jump over the fence, you gotta help him out though, Jordan, because he's got bad eyes.
I definitely gotta come. Let us know when you hear siren.
I can hear sirens.
Yeah, fuck, I might come to the car now.
Yeah, I'm just over the back fence. I can see them now. They can't see me. I'm gonna turn my lights off. They're not approaching yet. I'm over the back fence. Keep running to your left. Left. Yep, jump that fence.
Yeah, luckily I can see through this wall.
They didn't see us at all.
Fuck, hold on, I'm really challenged at the moment, apparently.
They didn't see us at all, mate. Because it's in the back here. I had my lights off so I didn't see the car parked. Oh!
Oh, go back.
Jesus Christ!
There's another one back there. Another garage close by.
Oh, I'll do the back fence again, because that's a good spot. Why are you talking on the radio,
It's
Dose?
the same house, is it?
Oh, they're coming, go.
Oh, God, they're coming.
How do they know?
They do. They're not very good at driving them.
Fucking see.
Oh, no, neither am I. No!
No! They can't see us. They don't know it's us. They don't know it's us. Oh my god.
Oh my god, they're blind. Just don't
Oh.
move.
Don't move. Don't move. Oh, what's he doing? He's doing a Yui. Oh.
No, we're good.
What the fuck? Are you fucking serious?
Bro, there's no way.
Fuck me! Movement-based vision. Oh my god, chat. That's mean. Oh.
Mate, they're really thirsty, mate.
Why do you keep talking on the radio, Dose?
Oh, sorry, mate. Wrong muscle.
Alright. Now, there's another garage here. Are we doing this one as well?
Yeah, another garage.
Alright.
There's no way that just happened.
My heart's pounding, chat. My heart is pounding. Wait, what are we doing? Another back door here? We just,
Is that a local, heli?
I think there's a local that cruises around here. I'm gonna park here, boys.
A local that cruises around. That's
I'm gonna say it's over this. Yeah.
Is this too far?
Let me suss it out. Jump the fence.
Yeah, that's moving like a local.
Oh fuck.
Oh, your door. Sorry about your fuck.
It's alright, mate. It's my fault.
Fucking weight reduction.
This is a gate,
Yeah,
so I
that
can
main
park in
road
here.
might be a bit sus.
No, we got the spot here, boys. I'm parked up, ready to get out of here. This is it, chat. That's so good. Movement-based vision. That's so lucky.
Oh yep, you're over there. Okay, cool.
I can't believe we fell in front of them and there's nothing happened. I was like, that's it. We're done. I'll take that though. That's another dub. We just teased him at this point, huh? I think that's a local too, that heli. I don't even know. I mean, just need to drive straight through there, chat. Straight through. Straight to the impound lot, I reckon. And a great song for this. We'll get on off if you guys to chat while we're chilling. 100k, eh? Well, yeah, that's what I got to look out for, right? That's what I got to look out for. Hopefully they don't see me. That's why the lights are off, right? To be fair, though, pretty hard to spot me in here, man. Like, that's a fucking... I'm hidden in half next to a bunch of cars. No sirens. See you nothing yet.
We're nearly done.
But see, they might try and investigate now. See, that might be the play. Could be something else happening too. Yeah, I see lights. I see lights.
We're coming.
We're coming.
Seatbelts. That's him, chat. That's him. Oh, that's not him. That's definitely not him. They not see us yet, though. Nice. I'm just too cheeky with it, boys. Is that close by?
Criminal.
Just park up here for a second.
There's a Spoochie somewhere there.
They're robbing garages.
It's the same one that we met them.
They're robbing garages. And so that's what we've been doing, just hitting different garages and houses. It's level 4 in the house robberies you start getting garages. Yes, there's a repair, but I'm going to buy some repair kits if I can get to a shop.
Go to Mega Mall, they're cheaper.
You can buy a repair kit from Mega Mall.
Yeah, they're $100.
Really?
Yeah, I found that out yesterday.
I've been ripping myself off. Give me a second, I'll buy 2.
Yeah, I fucking went to the 24/7. I bought fucking 3 of the cunts.
That's expensive, bro.
Cheaper.
It's actually mad. Thanks for the shout.
Should I buy some bananas? What do you reckon?
Yeah, get some bananas to go. I haven't seen how they work.
I don't know, I'll buy 2.
They definitely do. 100% they do.
They work? Yeah, I thought they worked.
Yeah, me and
Let's quickly repair it.
I watched Vivian drop like 5 of the cunts.
Oh, we've been caught. We've been caught. Get ready to get in.
They're fucking blind.
Oh, no. No. What the fuck, man?
They didn't catch us doing anything, so they can't get us.
We've been in a pursuit in this car. What are you talking about?
Oh, I mean, yeah.
There he is there. Look, he's chasing somebody else. We just chase them. Join the pursuit, mate. Oh no, he's slowing down. Whoop.
He's got revert on.
Yeah, not for us, mate. Let's get out of there. The Spoochie, you said?
Yeah, the fucking first one where they caught us.
Yeah. Where they think they caught us. Just a figure of the imagination at this point.
Where they tried.
We caught them.
Certainly didn't catch me, that's for sure.
No, yeah. Old Faithful is still there.
Yeah, mate. You want to chuck the stuff in the boot before this house so you can empty your pockets a little bit?
Yeah, I might do that.
We can wait there for a second at least. Before we run in. That was weird. I was trying to set a car park next to that fucking weird, like, promenade back there. Can I do the cheeky over this fence here? Whee! That's good to know. Ooh, this is gonna be an interesting one. I think it's on the outside of this, you just hear or something.
Yeah, even better.
Alright, there you go, chuck the stuff in the boot, I'll be waiting here. Harder run from this one, chat, and Thomas got himself 100k chippies. Congratulations, G-Star. Don't spend them all at once, alright? Don't spend them all at once, alright? Get some more rubbing off.
Alright, she's full.
Don't stack.
Yeah.
Boop, 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 boop. Yeah. He's still putting all his stuff away. Let's see if Pokédex 2 is working. Is that going to work for us now, or is it wigged out? Yeah, maybe it was just because of timing and stuff. definitely works, but must have been just doing it too quickly while other Pokemon stuff was happening. Appreciate your help, Muscle, mate. Oh, yeah, you got it, you got it.
Trying. It just wasn't showing up for me.
I wonder if they're even looking for us at that last place, because they seemed like they were chasing that ute or something. I'm definitely going to have a warrant for my arrest too, because I've not scratched my plates in this
They
thing.
were, but they just rocked up way too late.
Yeah, they might be fucking... Not...
Gonna fake plates on that thing, or?
No, I was gonna, but we just fucking big ballsed it, mate.
Smart Home Hub.
Ooh, Google Home.
I only ever run fake plates when I'm doing like a bank or something. Like,
I'm back here, mate. Just behind you. You're all good. There's no one here. I'm just gonna drive away normally, mate. There's no need to fucking get you like a bat out of hell. Right, I guess another house. Or do you want to move it up to a smash and grab or something?
Whatever.
Cleaning up on these houses, that's for sure.
yeah, we can do a smash and grab something. We'll pull this shit away and then fucking.
Yeah, we'll do with this last house that Ghost has got.
We don't have to do this one.
Oh, you might as well, mate. Extra stuff. Finish the run, mate.
Yeah.
How you going, Jimmy, mate? You still doing meth supply runs, or have you given up now? Gone to the casino or something? Must be Gonskis.
He's not even on the radio anymore, it's just us.
Yeah, it's just us three, is it? Now, see if I can make it up this hill this time. Fucking hell. I hate that little gap. Another garage, I think. This one should be easy to get away from as well. Plenty of alleyways around here. Might be able to do the same backdoor trick again. Yeah, we can. So, if you guys jump the fence through here, you can even run in this little gap out here. I found weed plants behind this house the other day, funnily enough. Just here, literally.
Yeah, right.
I'll be waiting here for you, boys. Now, if we get bloody blocked in by cops, you can hit that fence, go that way, that way, that way. There's literally, what is that? 1, 2, 3 escapes. I actually didn't know about that gap in the fence there. Or is it not that one? It's the gap in the fence to the right. That's mad to know about, because there's the one near the Jamestown, like, Govey Flats, projects, whatever you call them.
Oh, this is an actual fucking 2-story house.
And you go between the tree and the house, pump it through there. That's, I didn't know there's one in every one of these alleyways, so it's obviously this map design. Is it a basement, does it? Or is it one of those, like, Wi-Fi top floors? You got Jigglypuff too, and
One of the
trying to catch
ones
it.
with a kitchen and, you know, like a living room.
Oh, yeah, it's a house. I think you can get in that backyard pretty easily, though, looking at that. Oh, the cop's not as interested in us now. You gotta head out, Julio? No worries, man. Thanks for coming in, bro. That's good seeing you. It's good catching up with you. All love, bro. Have a good rest of your night.
Someone to sleep there over there, mate.
There's a fucking dog in here, mate.
Be warned about Michael Sharp roaming around. Oh, I will be warned. I'm glad to see he's around. Much love to you, bro. Glad to see you. I have to catch up sometime and actually have a chat. Kick back, bro. It's good to see you, though. I hope you enjoy. And thank you for kicking back and liking and enjoying the content.
Oh, mate. I'll let you get all this stuff. I've got no room.
Shut up. No, he's running around. Yeah, we're all quiet in the western front out here, boys.
I might need to go outside.
No cuts needed.
I don't have any fucking room either.
It's alright, mate. You know, just go back in, I'm pretty sure, can't you?
Yeah.
No cuts. No cuts needed. No, we're doing crime and cuts. Nah, where's Willie said no more crime and cuts. He got cranky with us. You have to blame Ziggy. It's because Wee-Wee's out there telling him that we're this, we're that. I'm just Monkey Man in a weeb shirt now. That's me, Bred. That's who I am. I ain't no cut wearing VP swearing fucking Jimmy fucking Karen Bikey. Hey, did something just happen? Wait, sounds like a fucking pussy. I'm not a pussy. Maybe slightly. Maybe slightly. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I could do better next time, Tinsy. Alright? I'll do better next time. Bap. Where are these cops? Hey? Where are these cops? Actually kind of stressing a little bit. Not stressing in the sense of like, I want to get done, but I'm going to get done, chat. I suppose what you meant by BAP too. That's so rude. That's not a very nice abbreviation. You have LBS, alright, Kinsey? You wanna start this? Yeah. So you can play this game. I can say mean abbreviations that'll take you a second to think about. HP. That's not ideal. You should get that checked out, bro. I'm pretty sure that's curable. That's like, you know, if you should have like no excuse to have that, right? Does it cause cancer in women? That's not good. I'd get that checked out, Tinsy. Fuck, that caught me off guard. Just about to leave you, eh? See what happened in the Foot Falcons.
Ah, shit.
Very on guard tonight. I'm on guard.
Got you something fresh from the kitchen, mate.
Oh, is it a sandwich?
Nah, it's a cake.
Cake? I like eating cake down by the ocean.
Yeah, there you go, mate.
Why is that gap in that fence there? No reason other than getting out this backyard. Alright, good to know though. So, from future reference, you know how I hit that gap earlier and I was like, oh, that looks gangster. This one just here. Both fences lead the road.
Secret little fence.
Look out. You got timed out, bitch. Hey, where's your mod? Nah, your mod's back, bro. I gave you mod back when you got timed out. Yeah, it auto gives you it back after the timeout. Alright, so we should do a smash and grab now. Let me, we'll switch cars or something. We're getting that fucking buffalo of yours, eh?
Yeah, fuck it.
Yeah. Bloody.
Might get the Sultan out just in case, though.
Yeah, well, you want to see one of these cars you can grab so we have a car to drive from the garage?
Yeah.
Actually, I'll get you guys to put the shit in the boot and hopefully there's a car at Garbo thinking about that. Hey, that looks like a nice car.
That's one of my cars.
Is it really?
That one. Yeah. Let me put it away.
Yeah.
Think it.
Unmod Zeki, get rid of him. Flop. No, use the timeout on him, mate. Use your channel points. Alright, we'll meet you at the garage. Let's meet you at the garbage garage there, Dose. Oh, it's a wall, no. That's a gap you can make. You have the balls for it.
Hey?
There was a gap back there. This is like you could jump between like the college to Garbo, but you could have the balls to hit it and not hit a pole.
Oh, yeah.
I'll let you put the shit in the boot and then we'll put this car away. Yeah, no, I'm saying the Zeki's got to do it back to you. Do it again. Use the channel points. Get it going. I can do it to people too. It's actually pretty cool. Try to time out Jazzberry. I'll do it. Shit, VIP. Time out Zeki. Do I do Zeki? But then no one has to spend any points on it. Because that's the whole point. No, I think it's a good idea though. I like that idea.
Just had an interaction with the copper dogs. He said he was going to impound me car.
They will when they see how much fun it is. Oh, I'm timing out now. You can do random timeouts on yourself. Yeah, just chuck that in the boot, what you got, and I'll put this car away. Oh, you can eat this cake. That's mad. Can I have a lead mod? Nah, that's Jazzberry Blues only. I don't trust any of you guys. No trust for you, Nashi.
We gotta head on down to the markets in a minute. I got a customer waiting.
Alright, I got you. Oh, what the fuck have you done to this, Jordan? Oh my god, this is clapped the fuck out. Was that, we done houses for a bit, then I'll let you do your fucking, your shop for a second. I'll go craft all that shit up and turn it into something.
Yeah, why not, mate? Yeah.
Yep.
I gotta go take the bins out and
Love this too.
in me head, mate.
Gotcha, mate, gotcha.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
The timeout Zeke, I could do it. No, so I don't know how Zeke ended up with mod. I think, like, if I'm honest with you, Zeke would have gave me mod on his stream and I would have just felt bad. That's how Chippy got it too. But with Raw I trusted. Raw I definitely trusted.
Hey, look at the back of this car, mate. Look in the boot.
Oh, it's blocked. Yeah, it was in there.
In the boot, mate. Yeah, have a look, mate. It's a bit of marijuana.
Do you have many of those bloody mods then? Fuck, you done well, mate. There's heaps of bags in here. Lazy Days, Plain Jane,
fucking ganja farmer over here, mate. Bit of everything.
Mountain Boar? What the fuck is that?
Yeah, mate. Level 4 stuff.
Fucking hell. We can definitely cuddle.
When,
He's got him back too.
Good, sometimes I can sell my bags for 100 per.
Maybe do like a mod Olympics. We can see. Tinty, I probably trust more. Nashi's alright. That's mad, bro. I sold some diamond weed the other day and got like $5 grand.
Yeah, diamond's fucking real good.
Yeah. It's the go.
Do you have a burner phone?
No, I don't. I need to buy a craft one for myself, eh?
Yeah, you gotta get a burner phone. That way you can see the market.
Time out, Chippy.
At the moment. Sometimes they pay a little bit more.
Oh, is that how you find out?
Yeah.
Oh, where do you...
Oh shit, better put this away, mate.
Yeah, definitely, actually.
Yeah, definitely get a burner phone, mate.
Can we just craft them, mate? Where do you craft them?
Yeah, mate, you can craft them, but just at the, the hacking place.
Oh, one of the hacking dens, mate. There's either one up in, near Digiden or Elysian.
Yeah, one in the industrial and one in,
Mad. Kinsey's alright, I still just trusted.
500 dirty, 100 electronic waste, and, something else, a phone, I think.
Alright. Well, that's good to know. Alright, thank you. I'll go craft one today, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you might as well, man. You might as well.
Yeah, I'd turn one into and buy another phone. Because, so I could check when weed's good. Because I was wondering why, what sells better when,
Yeah, definitely get that phone, mate. It helps.
Is it just what sells better or which time? There's no, areas to sell, or...?
Nah, it just depends on,
time?
Tsunami.
Yep, gotcha.
Yeah.
Alright, legend, thank you. Dose, I might come down and grab a feed off you soon too. I'm running out of food myself.
Yeah.
Smash through it.
Mate, I'll see you guys around.
Cheers, Dose.
Right, mate.
What are you up to now, Jordan, mate?
I got a bunch of shit in my pocket still that I couldn't fit in the boot, so I'll just come with you to recycle it.
Oh, yeah, easy. I didn't realise it was full already. You can probably just give it to me if you wanted to.
Yeah, mate, fucking He's packed. Oh, fuck.
It's alright.
Smashing windows, mate.
Oh. No, I've got to wait for him, poor fella. Taking off without him. Leaving him behind, chat. Alright, here we are, just pulling in. Little quick escape route.
I didn't know there was a bunch here.
Yeah, didn't you know that? It's good, actually. It's pretty handy.
I thought you had to go up to the fucking...
Up north every time.
Yeah.
Nothing else is here to craft with, but it's just these, unfortunately. Now, nothing labelled garbage actually goes through here.
Oh. Elijah, I'm at a police chase at the moment.
Oh, we better go help this cunt. We better go help him. I can hear the coppers.
Nothing.
Too much weight. Alright. Screwdriver. That's actually stuff I bought off Chich today. I forgot to collect there. That's funny as. Boom. Oh, it's already full. We have to do all these recyclers off. Do not tell them where we are.
Oh, fuck, man.
Fuck, these fill up quick.
They fucking do, don't they?
Yeah, it's only 10 kegs of space. A little bit more. Close hang up. Well, no.
Didn't realise you had to start it.
That one's full too, I think.
Papa, I'll be there soon.
Yeah, sorry, wee, mate. Me and Jordan are just busy with something.
Badger, I'm just fucking with them at the moment. Oh my god!
I got him. Where are you?
Legion Square going onto the freeway.
Right.
Sandy or?
There's more in the boot, I think.
In the city.
I'll be around. I'm going near the police station.
Is that it? There's more in the glovey too, wasn't there, chat?
Is that everything?
Nearly. Yeah, set that one off. Set that one off.
Oh, there's still room in this one, I think.
Nah, it's alright. I'll just fucking chuck these in this one.
Good, I lost some. I fucking brake
I'll take
checked
it back.
them.
No, it's not.
Alright, let's have a look what rubbish is left.
I'm at Great Ocean Highway. Oh no, I think one of them might be back on me. Oh, one of them's coming back on me at Great Ocean.
Oh, that's in the input. Sweet, so we got recycled everything that can get recycled. Collect the output. Waste fasteners, copper roll.
So far away, what the fuck?
Chuck it all in the boot.
Yeah.
Right, bam, 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 bam. Oh, I want to keep that on me. So take that up to the thing to sort that out. Organic waste is there.
I'm near the market.
What's up there?
I'm past the pier.
Can't believe we had to fill up all the recycles. That's so much shit. Is that everything?
I'm there for Spooty Mark.
Coming now, do you need a pickup?
Possibly.
Take those.
Should be what?
Sorry, say that again.
A pickup?
Yeah, I might need a pick.
Where are you?
At the markets, for Booby Markets.
I see, keep going left and go to the intersection to your left.
Yeah,
I don't
right,
need to
next
pick up at
one.
the moment, just stay around me. I should be okay for now.
Are you all good? Do you need
Yeah,
a hand?
I should be okay. I should be able to lose these motherfuckers. They suck at fucking driving.
Fucking wee.
You wanted to chuck that other garbage back through?
Yeah, no, the garbage doesn't go through there. It goes to the bottle cap guy, man. That's why it's not recycling. Anything labelled garbage goes to the bottle cap guy in the sewers.
Cups around. Oh,
true.
fuck,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
checked on the
I was
cup.
really paying attention to what it was.
Yeah, that's why I'm putting it in the back of the car.
Their ankles will be tight.
I heard some guy that fucking sounds like he's swinging ciggies for the last 10 years.
No, I've lost the cops. I'm good. I am
So,
okay.
is that everything empty? The inputs and outputs?
Towards markets now.
I knew that he would be getting it wrong.
Getting out of the these three.
Yeah, I think it's everything.
Where are you, Papa?
I'm at Great Ocean Highway. I'm going up towards the graveyard.
Nice. Oh, take you to a car, Jordan, mate.
Shenanigans.
Yeah, mate.
Hey, is the vice president
Nice.
here?
Yeah, mate.
Are your like little friends around at the moment?
I don't think so. I can give him a text and see.
Yeah, that'll be great. Thanks.
Who's he talking about?
The graveyard.
Nigel and
I'm in the
Cheech.
garage here, dickhead.
Oh, yeah.
I seen old Nigel today and he'd already robbed houses, and I robbed a house with him myself over in Grove Street. Oh, what's happened here?
Grab my Lambo out.
Yeah, I'll go sort this out, Jordan. I'll speak to you in a few minutes.
Street. Home.
Right, we've got some more car parts to chop up, chat. Sort them out, get them done, skis. Nice little run of houses though, it wasn't too bad. You got a few pursuits in, can't complain. Definitely getting hot and sweating. Gonna clean up all this stuff to put away in the storage. I actually went through and sold a bunch of shit out of the crew storage because we had too much shit. It's like filling up the chop garage. It was pretty bad. It's pretty bad. Might get that in the big jobs. Still driving in the hot car, which is probably dumb, but anyway. Anything in here? Anything in here? No.
You need a pickup?
I'm okay, thank you. I'm safe and sound.
Look at that. And look at that, we're sorted, chat. Should we go down and suss out the, what's it called, dude? What's his name? The bottle cap guy that I was telling Jordan about? Oh, what? I thought jump start cables did go through there. Hey, yeah, I swear they do.
No, I'm not getting chased, no.
MIA you're tripping. Alright, take the guy chat. We will go to the bottle cap guy chat. We'll have a suss of him. So I can move all this around too. Make it look a bit neater.
Well, my VIP pass just expired, so that means I can spin me fucking wheel again.
Got heaps of duct tape. I swear that's for something, but I don't know what. It's like, that's a fair bit for the runs we did too.
Fucking drinks yesterday, got ripped off.
Now, I want to see, am I tripping, or can this get put through this here?
Yeah, that's
so I did
right.
tell Dose it can, but I think I'm mistaken. Chip perks. Yeah, it does. Jump start cables. Nice, missed it. Too quick on the... Too quick, chat.
Yeah, it was rough, because it was like the drinks that are in between like the car and 25k.
I swear no one's won the car, but someone's telling me you can buy it from PDM.
Is that everything? Alright, shall I reveal this bottle cap guy, chat?
Yeah, you probably can.
Do you know the bottle cap guy I was talking about, Jordan? Do you know where to find him?
The sewers?
Yeah, it's the sewers. I was just going to tell Jordan if he didn't know.
I need to actually ask Torvik. There's a chemist guy down there and he doesn't want to talk to me.
I think that might have something to do with bloody meth, eh?
But I was thinking,
Like, as in, like, a level from bloody cooking meth, eh? We've got to cook some more. That's one of my jobs, actually, to be honest with you.
Cook that meth.
Yeah, it's why you're getting on the supplies for us.
Yeah, I've got fucking 17 boxes.
Stop at 20, eh? And then just put them inside the crew storage.
I had to stop at like 16 because it just wouldn't let me do any more. The GPS went boom, and I saw no guy.
He's definitely probably still on your map, mate. You just probably can't find him, eh? Like you did last time.
I scanned like 10 times.
Alright. It's not that big of a deal.
That's
I
better
tried
than
to do
nothing.
it the other day and they let me do it twice.
Yeah, there's no limit to how many times you can do it. Like, what happened to Jimmy earlier was that the route went near Roxwood, and sometimes the Google Maps has a fit, and he's like update his phone or something, and then we found it. But yeah, unless it wigs out.
No, I found it again, but no, it was like full cooked. It was, I couldn't see nothing, couldn't see no little guy. I saw like the normal little guys out there, but I couldn't see like my little guy.
Well, mate, I thought you were a pretty skinny dude, but if you can't see a little guy, mate, maybe you should try, I don't know, bending your neck.
I knew that you were going to do that. No, my guy's big.
Oh, I think the size of your forehead begs a difference, mate. You got a big head, big ears. I wouldn't say you got a big little
I got
fella.
big shoes though, mate. I'm 14.
What?
Yep.
You're not actually a fucking child, are you?
No, I'm not. But I got size 14 shoes, so you know what they say.
You're not a child, there's kid brains,
Big
alright.
shoe, nice cock. My bad.
Mate, sometimes I'm gravely concerned about my well-being being near you.
Okay, no.
About 12.5k, it made up for it.
Oh. I can't spin until 1 o'clock in the morning, chat. I fucked up. I'm straight fucked up. Very silly, Don. I can't spin till 1 this morning, I think. I was a silly bugger last night.
Naughty.
Swear it's because of you.
I wasn't even fucking around. I fucking had just been in bed by like 11 o'clock.
No, it's because at my time of fucking spinning the wheel, I had to fucking come kneecap you, mate.
You couldn't kneecap if you tried.
Yeah, you just don't remember it.
I'm pretty sure I fucking kneecapped you pretty well.
Let's get some bottle caps, mad. I wonder if duct tape actually changes into bottle caps. I don't know. Everything that's labelled garbage definitely does. What's that? It's like 60? Is that only 60 bottle caps? I think we have like 1,500, something like that. Yeah, man. Alright, back out of here. Alright, is that it, chat? Is that it for the craftables? I think I actually probably should smelt that stuff if I wanted to like get into the crew storage. I have a feeling though we're pretty chock-a-block in that storage, so.
I can't wait till I can clean dirty at a higher fucking profit margin.
Yeah, what, if your levels, mate, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, with my shop.
Hey! Out of the bloody kebab shop, you mean? Son, drugs ladies kebab shop. Cheeky bugger. Cheeky bloody bugger.
Very, very long time till I can do that though. A lot of kebabs.
Oh, do you get like experience every time you sell food or make food or something?
Yeah, only when I sell food.
That's cool, but that's interesting.
Yeah, so I don't get any for, you know, making it. I don't really get, so I only really get it if I sell it.
And what can you just like stock anything you want at a certain level of food selling rep or whatever?
Yeah, so
The fuck did you do, sir?
What's way going on about? I might even end up
lasts
mods.
like 24 hours. I can get locals coming up to me buying, you know, product off me. You know, the vending machine, obviously, and I can eventually bring on employees.
That's actually pretty sick, dude. I didn't realise that.
It's a bit of a grind, though.
Right, what can we chuck away in that storage off the bat?
Guys, we're in another police pursuit. Apparently the cops want Jimmy for some reason.
Because I'm small.
I got a car, I'm coming. Where are you?
Well, did they look at the casino first, or?
No, they did. They looked right at the casino.
We first rocked up at the casino. They said something about a small man, and my son just started running away, and they tasered him, and now we're in a police chase.
I got a car. Do you guys need help?
I should be okay for it now. Jimmy's driving, and I'm scared.
Rough location, just so I can be nearby.
We're near going past Princey Bank.
Oh yeah, I'll be nearby.
We're just around Princey Banks. I got one whole car out at the moment.
That's alright, mate.
Hey, Mosa.
It's gotta get fuel at 7101, mate.
We're now near Spanish Avenue as well.
Fucking wee the menace. Is this pretending he's in the cop pursuit so you can fucking go to the casino again? Is that what he's doing?
Yeah, that's us.
He did that last time. Look at you guys to chat next to his exclamation point. Do you want to get in there, alright? Little 100k.
Page? I think, no, that's a pink cage. Are we going now? Now we're going towards Cherubel Temple.
Jazz is getting in there. Thomas is getting in there. Nice. I've got to probably craft that stuff, right? Turn it into what it needs to be turned into, but big can't be bothered. Big can't be bothered. We got heaps of storage stuff in there. Guys takes it off of these guys that didn't fucking want it. We got bands of dirty. Should we turn this dirty money into this flat dirty money for now? I reckon we'll do that quickly. It's in Spanish Ave.
He pulled over on the overpass on Los Lagunas Boulevard.
You are.
I know, I'm behind him, he just stopped.
What did you do, you fucking idiot? Why are the cops on you, you dumbass? Oh,
God. We got two cops on us.
Yeah, I see that.
Oh my god, it's down. This.
The highway crashed into a local.
What's this song?
Long eyes, we might be okay. Oh, no, never mind. We've got one on AA. Jimmy's about to do a jump. I'm scared.
Nope. Yeah, I'm just sitting at a red car park. I seen you guys drive past.
Where did it go?
I'm getting tailed.
Check, we're on integrity.
What's up, mate?
Yeah, you're driving the fucking car that we were getting chased in before.
We're underneath the...
Oh, boys, this ain't good.
Oh,
fuck. I'm Richard then.
We'll try... We are you?
They on me now. They made my car. They made my car. I don't know why I came with the same car from earlier. That was a bit dumb on my behalf, not gonna lie, but...
Are you?
I had a little drive. Got past Burger Shot now. I'm gonna go down to the beach. See the boys like the sand in their hair. Don't hit the legs here, chat. Good morning. Twin Cities again. Loyalty forever, brother. Loyalty of a royalty gang fresh. Nah, cheers, brother. Going past the Little Soul gas station in the jump there. Doesn't sound good. Good song for this.
I can unlock my 4-door at the clothes shop if you want.
That's right. I'm out here breaking legs. They call me DonHulieo for a reason, mate. I'm all good.
Oh, you've already broken.
Yeah, he's only just going
Yeah,
into the
he's just
garage.
fucked up.
Yeah, we out, baby.
Yeah, you're out, mate.
Papa, you okay?
Yeah, he went the wrong way. Yeah, you guys are safe.
Yeah,
He went through the
fucking
he just
the garage.
he just went through the garage.
Papa.
You got fucking no idea, mate. I think he thinks that you're in the garage.
Does he? I fucking dropped out the other side and went left. I'm now up at Turbo Temple. That's how good I am.
The alley, like, across from the garage.
Yeah, I'm up at Turbo Temple now, mate. That's how fucking quick I'll get out of there.
Where are you, son? Where are you, you fucking dumbass? I'm running.
We park this car up and get rid of it. I've been made though.
I'm in the sandbank.
I'm definitely getting a warrant for my arrest, but after all this, that's for fucking sure. They made my car. Alrighty, chat. Well, with that glorious end of a pursuit, I think that's what we're calling the stream tonight, eh? Little short one, little bit of a chill one. Well, fuck, that was gangster. How many pursuits did we get in? Holy shit.
From Lucky Plucker talking to Doze.
Fuck, man. That's like 3-4 pursuits. Cops on us, cops off us. Heaps of house robberies.
I'm about to get a bolt.
These two are getting done dirty. They're in pursuits as well.
He's getting chased.
I think they are. They're getting pursuits. Alright, let's find someone to raid, but who's live at the minute? Is anyone streaming Newspark? Not Newspark, Supernova. I had a full fucking moment. Hey, Care as well, Big Trash Bin. Thanks for hooking in.
The biggest dumbass.
Where are you?
Marine
Is it just
garage, I need to
me?
pick up Marine
Just
garage
me
right
streaming Newspark? Well, if you guys have any suggestions, I can also chuck a raid over to them as well. Yeah, chuck them in the chat now. I'm trying to look at.
Jimmy tried to fucking
Can't see anything.
ram the cop car.
Because I only have a few people that I'm following at the moment.
Put himself into the water instead.
I only have a few people. We might even just call it there, raid chat. Let's do a chill one and just finish it up.
Jimmy, where are you? You okay?
Think so. I'll let these guys know I'm heading, but thank you guys are hooking in the stream. It's been an absolute pleasure streaming for you guys. We're going live again from sometime after 7 PM tomorrow, which will probably be exactly on 7, given how I've been doing the past week so far. I've been doing 7 o'clock every time. But, yeah, be a bit more RP most likely, but I don't even know. We'll have to just wait and see. But thank you guys all for tuning in. Much love. Thank you guys for just showing up and for the subs tonight too. We had a few subs, didn't we? I should probably mention those. We got 75% of the way to our sub goal, which is fat. Big Trash Panda gifted a sub to Thomas. Chippy resubscribed. And Simsy Love gave us a follow. All beautiful things, beautiful events. And remember, chat, as I've been saying every other night, fuck Kelly Holiday. Have a good night. Love you guys. See you next stream.